Alright, so today I want to show you my very first ball python eggs of 2020. It's pretty exciting. As a matter of fact, last year I actually was getting eggs about a month and a half earlier than this year, and I actually started pairing up at the same time. And this year I was getting a little nervous thinking, hey, where are all my ball python eggs? Here it is, a month and a half after where I'd normally expect ball python eggs, and I haven't seen anything yet. And luckily they're starting to come a little bit later than I expected, but at least I'm actually getting some eggs this year. And I was actually going through my females this morning about 4 hours ago, and I had a really big female. She laid her first eggs. It looked like she had about 4 eggs under her, and I'm expecting maybe 9 or 10. She is a really big female, and I gave her about 4 hours. Hopefully she's actually laid all those, and hopefully they're not stuck together too much. I actually like to separate them a little bit before I set them up in the egg box. So I want to show you the male that actually came from that pairing. It's actually a pastel Enchi Desert Ghost male, really beautiful male, and I actually paired that with my pastel calico female. Should get some really interesting combinations, hoping for maybe like a super pastel calico that I could work back into my Desert Ghost project, which would be pretty awesome. And I want to show you what the male looks like, and then we're going to remove the female from the eggs, and I want to show you how to set the eggs up in the incubator in the egg boxes. And kind of one of the things I'm going to do a little bit different this year is I'm going to spray the inside of the egg boxes with hydrogen peroxide. And you know, we're always trying to find these little tricks how to keep the eggs, you know, from getting the bacteria and the fungus on them. And I kind of stumbled on this from hatching chicken eggs. I'm actually working on hatching out some chickens and ducks and looking through all the videos on YouTube, and I actually stumbled on this patent. Someone actually has a patent where you can actually spray chicken eggs and duck eggs with hydrogen peroxide, and essentially what that does is it kills all the bacteria and the viruses and all the fungus and everything on the eggs, and it really increases your hatch rate. As a matter of fact, I was looking at one guy and he said he was hatching out some chicken eggs, and his hatch rate went from about 60% up to 100% with hydrogen peroxide. And I got to thinking, you know, that'd be kind of cool on my snake eggs, but I don't know if I'm brave enough to actually spray that stuff directly on my snake eggs. So I think I'm going to do, just to kind of start out, is I'm going to spray the inside of the egg boxes before I put the eggs in and before I set them up in the incubator. So I'm going to jump over and I want to show you the male, and then we'll work on getting this female off the eggs and setting the eggs up in the incubator. Alright, so I actually have the male over here in this tub right here. This is my pastel Desert Ghost. This is actually an Enchi pastel Desert Ghost. I proved out the Enchi last year, and I kind of wanted to show you this. This is one of the challenges of using coconut husk. I just went through here and changed all the waters and put some water on the substrate to add some humidity, and look what he did to his water. I mean, you really got to stay on top of these because obviously, you know, they can't really drink very well. Something like this, you really got to stay on top of the water. But look at how beautiful this snake is. This is a visual Desert Ghost, and the Desert Ghost is really awesome, especially when you mix it with pastel. It really has this really bright color. Look at how bright it is. And the Enchi, essentially what the Enchi does is it really reduces the pattern. And this is the male. Let me show you the female that is on the eggs. Alright, so I actually have the female down here, second to the bottom tub, and I'm kind of curious to see how many eggs this girl has laid right now. And let's see, oh, she's like, it looks like she laid them all, and she is wrapped around those eggs. Take a look at that. That is really awesome. She is on a whole bunch of eggs. You can't really see how many eggs there are, but I can guarantee you there is probably more than 6 eggs in that female. You know, pretty much once they kind of wrap around like that, that she is pretty much done laying. And usually what I do is I work to take the female off the eggs, and then I feel inside the body, kind of down the belly, to make sure that she doesn't have any eggs in. But she kind of looks like maybe she's done laying eggs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tub, I'm going to move it over to my table over here, and then I'm going to try to get her off of the eggs without getting bit. Sometimes these females can be a little bit nippy. And then I'll move her into another tub, and then we'll work on setting up the eggs in the incubator. All right, so this is always the tricky part, getting the female off of the eggs, and sometimes it can be a little tricky because sometimes the female can be a little bit kind of, you know, I've never actually been bit. I've always avoided getting bit by a female ball python that is on eggs, but you know, it's always a possibility. They can be pretty snippy, and they kind of follow you around a little bit with their head like they're gonna bite you, but I've never actually been bit by a girl like this. Look at all those beautiful eggs. And so far it doesn't look like we have any slugs in there. They all look like fertile eggs. And the first thing I'm going to do is I want to feel if she still has some eggs in her. Actually it feels like she does have some eggs in her still. So you can actually see kind of in her belly, maybe, I'm thinking maybe 3 or 4 more in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move her to another tub, and then we'll work on those eggs, and we'll see how she does laying some more eggs. I might have to give her like the night tonight or something. And sometimes you can actually have a snake that's egg bound, which is a really bad situation. You definitely don't want that situation, getting into an egg bound situation. So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it looks like maybe this bottom one here could be a slug on the bottom, a really small one. But take a look at those beauties. Oh yeah. Those look like some good eggs right there. And they're kind of all falling apart. Usually I just kind of tease them apart a little bit, and they look like they're coming apart. And you can take a look at this one right here. This is definitely a slug. This is an infertile egg right here. This isn't even worth, you know, trying to hatch or anything else. That's definitely not going to hatch. It's not fertile. And these other ones, essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate them, and then I'm actually going to figure out where the embryo is on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn out some lights, and we'll candle them, and then what I use is I just use a little Sharpie marker to figure out where the embryo is. So let me turn out some of these lights here, and we'll get completely in the dark. And we'll candle some eggs here. Wow, my first eggs, which is pretty awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my marker, and I'll show you what this looks like when you can actually see the embryo. And essentially what it is it's this little tiny circle right on here. And what I do is I just put one little X right on the circle. You always want the embryos facing up. And you can definitely see if it's a fertile egg or not. If it's actually fertile, you'll actually see all these veins and everything. And that is the embryo right here. You can kind of see this one, not quite a circle, but that is the top. And you can definitely see on the small one, if you look at the small one, there's nothing in this egg at all. No embryo in this slug. So I'll take a look at this one. This is the embryo right here. And I've actually seen some articles on the internet that say if you put the embryo on the top, you actually get a slightly higher hatch rate versus if you actually put the embryo on the bottom. If you actually move it a little bit, you can see that the embryo kind of wiggle a little bit, and you can definitely tell that is the embryo. And I've also seen if you put the embryo on the bottom, they'll still hatch, but you won't get a higher hatch rate putting the embryo on the bottom, which is kind of an interesting. So you can definitely see on that one, that is a really strong embryo right there. I think my marker is kind of wearing out here. And here's the embryo on this one. You can see it jiggling around right there. And here's the last one. Yeah, I actually had one of my snakes early on was actually egg bound, and it took another day for it to actually lay the last one. So it looks like we got them all on that one. Okay, so for setting up the egg box, essentially what I use is I use these little kind of a plastic shoe box, and then inside what I do is I use these little plastic like an egg crate. You can actually get these on Amazon. As a matter of fact, I think I got all this on Amazon. And what I do is I mix 50-50 water and vermiculite. And last year I was actually using about 200 grams of each, and I found it was a little bit too much. And essentially what happened is it filled up the tub too much, where the eggs were really close to the very top, and I didn't want them touching the top. So this year I'm actually going to kind of cut it back down to like 150 grams of each, and it's about 50 grams for one of these deli cups here. So I'm thinking that's 134, 142, let's see, 147, 148, 149, 150.5. So then what I do is I zero it out again, and then I add the water. So when I'm adding the water, essentially what I do is I heat the water up to 90 degrees because that is the incubation temperature, and you kind of want it at 90 degrees to start with. So I'm just going to start pouring a little bit in here until I get close to about 150. So we're at 116, 120, 140, and then what I'll do is I'll take a little syringe. I have a little tiny syringe, and I'll just I use this to kind of get a little bit more accurate at the end, so I can get really pretty much exact between the amount of water and the amount of vermiculite. So we're at 147, 148, 149, 150.2. See if I can get 0.5. It doesn't have to be that exact. That's 150.5, so it's pretty exact there. And that actually has to stay pretty much hydrated for the whole entire time of the 60 days of incubation. And what I do is I just kind of mix it around a little bit in here to kind of make sure there's no wet spots or dry spots, and really just get it even. And it doesn't have to be super sterile in here. I've actually used to wear gloves and everything, but it doesn't have to be that sterile. I'm actually going to try the hydrogen peroxide this time and kind of spray it down a little bit right at the end with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. So from here what I do is I just kind of level it out and make it nice and even. And then I'll actually see if I can get this a little more even. Because you definitely, the hard part is you want it even so the eggs don't roll around. And when you put the little grate on top, it has to be pretty flat and level because you don't want the eggs rolling around. And from here, what I'm going to do is I actually have some of this hydrogen peroxide I put in a little spray bottle, and it's only 3%. So I'm just going to give it a quick little spritz on the inside just to give it a little more sterilization. I'm going to try it just to see if this will actually work. I'm not brave enough to actually spray the eggs yet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the eggs in this box. So when I'm actually putting these eggs in, essentially what you want to do is you want to kind of wedge them in there so they don't roll around. And some people actually use like popsicle sticks or something like that. And I'm just going to put them right in there. I don't like to put too many, and this is obviously the slug, so we're not going to use that. And what I like to do is kind of like a V shape all the way down until here. And if you actually get them in there right at the right angle, kind of touching in the middle, then you don't really need all the popsicle sticks and all that all around. I'm just going to kind of wedge it in just like that. And you definitely want to keep them away from the ends, and you want to keep them away from the sides, because if the water is dripping down on the sides or the end, you definitely can ruin your egg. And on some of these, it looks like there's a little bit of coconut husk right on the side. And one of these days I might get brave enough to actually spray hydrogen peroxide directly on the eggs, but I'm not that brave yet. I kind of like to see someone else do it first instead of, you know, risking my eggs. And you know, she's actually going to lay some more eggs, so I'm going to have a second box for these eggs, and I don't really like to put more than about 7 eggs per box. And then what I do is I use this press and seal to seal up the top. This stuff is really awesome. It's kind of sticky on one side and dry on the other, and you just put it right on. It's kind of weird. I've actually heard about this years ago, and I started using it with really awesome success. It keeps all the humidity in, and the oxygen actually goes right through the press and seal, and you don't have any problems with the hatchlings running out of air even after they come out of the shell. It's really awesome. And it's kind of weird because the box is completely enclosed with no holes and no vents or anything, and the press and seal on top here. And at first you think, you know, these hatchlings can't breathe, the eggs are gonna die. And I've actually seen so many people use press and seal with no holes and no ventilation. I've used it for the last couple of years, and it is fantastic. You get some really good hatch rates. Keeps the humidity just perfect over the entire time. So for here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the pairing on the top of the snake and then the date of hatch. Alright, so I actually have a Brother printer here, and I just printed some labels. And essentially what I do is I put the male and the female, so I know exactly what the pairing is, and I can just, at a quick glance, I know which one's which. And then I put the laid date, the date they laid, which is today, the 1st of May, and then it hatches in 60 days, which would be the 30th of June 2020. So it's 60 days. And let me tell you, that is a really long time to actually wait for snakes to come out of the egg. And what I'm going to do is I used to put the stickers on the top and the side, and this time I'm just going to put it right on the front. When you get it in the incubator, you can actually stack the boxes and you can see the labels on the front. So this is my very first one. In 2 months, they'll actually start hatching out some baby snakes. Alright, so here is my egg incubator. I actually built this out of a beverage cooler and adapted it to be a snake egg incubator, and I put my very first box of snake eggs right in here. This is pretty awesome. Right in the middle of the shelf, and essentially what it is I just kind of put the heat strips on the sides, and then I'm using a VE300 to control the temperature at 90 degrees, and then I have a little tiny fan in the back that circulates the air from the bottom of the top. And I've hatched a lot, probably hundreds of hatchlings out of this incubator, and it works really well to actually control and I don't really control the humidity in the incubator, just the temperature, and the humidity control is in the individual boxes with the press and seal on top of them. Alright, so one last thing we have to do is we have to move this female back up into that tub. And you can definitely see right here she has a few eggs right in her belly. She's really thin all through here, and then she's got maybe at least 2 eggs right here. And just kind of looking through the tub, doesn't look like she's laid any. Maybe another one in the back. So I'm kind of worried that this girl might be a little bit egg bound. And usually they'll actually lay, you can definitely see right there, she's got some eggs in there. So usually if I just let her overnight, you know, if I've had an egg-bound female, a lot of times if I just let them sit for overnight, they'll lay the last few eggs, and hopefully there won't be a problem. Alright, so there you have it. Those are my first ball python eggs of 2020, and I'll definitely keep you updated on the female and the last few eggs in her belly, and I'll probably let her wait until morning and check on her again. If she actually passes those eggs, I'll send them up in the incubator and I'll put it into the next video so you know what's going on. Hopefully we won't have to have any kind of an emergency vet visit. I've actually seen in some cases when a snake gets egg bound, you have to actually go in there manually and kind of deflate the eggs. I've seen some people where they take a needle and kind of drain the eggs and then work them out manually. That would be a nightmare. I've never actually experienced that myself, and I would definitely need a veterinarian to help me through that process. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.